Good morning. This morning's, some of you may have seen a meme go around a few years ago with a quote supposedly by Emma Watson, the actor who played Hermione Granger in the Harry Potter movies. Although Ms. Watson may have used this phrase in a speech she gave, she is not the originator. The original aphorism is by Hillel the Elder, an ancient Jewish rabbi and scholar of great renown. Rabbi Hillel lived in Jerusalem during the time of Caesar Augustus and Herod the Great, and is believed to have died just a few years after Jesus was born in the 1st century. Although Jesus and Hillel were alive at the same time, they probably never met, as Hillel died long before Jesus began his ministry. However, Hillel was so well known that Jesus surely knew who he was, and some of Jesus's teachings, for example, the Golden Rule, reflects the wisdom of Hillel. Our text today is one of Hillel's most famous sayings from a work known in English as the Chapters of the Fathers. Pirke, Avot 1 and 14. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, who am I? And if not now, when?
Well, before I turn things over to Jack, I just want to give a little introduction of our guest preacher, Jack Weinstein. He's a member of Temple Beth Torah here in Fremont, a practicing Jew, and a retired teacher and nonprofit education organization director. If you are or have been a high school teacher, you might know Facing History and Ourselves. And Jack was the director of the Bay Area chapter of that organization for many years. And he continues to consult with school districts on matters of equity, of addressing negative traditions, all those isms that we have in our lives, and confronting troubling history, and about who has membership in society and who does not. So this is his passion and vocation. And he is going to share with us how this aphorism by Hillel has helped inform his life and work. And so I'm so happy to have Jack Weinstein here as our preacher.
Good morning. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me clearly. Excellent. I apologize for the airplane look, the pilot look. I'm among my other descriptions, I'm hearing impaired, and that's gotten worse over the last few years. And so I find that that using this tool makes it a lot easier for me to follow along. So you'll have to put up with the odd look. I'm not in a radio station. I'm actually in my bedroom at home, so my wife and my daughter won't be bothered or inspired either. I always think I'm inspiring them, but usually I end up bothering them. And so I'm very pleased to be here. A little disclaimer before I begin. As Pastor Brenda said, I am a private citizen. I don't come to you to deliver a sermon from the perspective of a member of the clergy or someone formally trained in religious studies, but I do come with 70 years of exposure to the world as a practicing Jew and as someone who's always been interested and always been a seeker. And so with that in mind, let me begin, and hopefully you'll be able to follow along, and we'll be able to have some kind of an exchange down the line if it's appropriate and if it fits your time frame. So as the introduction said, I'm going to use Hillel's famous aphorism as the basis for some remarks, and hopefully as a staging for your own ability to think about the impact of some of these ideas as you navigate your life in these turbulent times. Hillel says, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? But if I am only for myself, who am I? And if not now, when? That English translation is roughly accurate. The Hebrew is Im en anili mili, kasher ni la'atzmi ma'ani, im lo achshav ematai. And I say it in Hebrew because it has a different feel to it when it's spoken in the original and when it's spoken in the language that it originated in. And I also think it's just interesting for people to hear that it comes to us sort of thousandth hand after so many generations, and yet it's survived turbulent times in every generation as a guiding principle, not only for Jews, but for many other people of faith who are literate in religious literature or in the liturgy of other people's faiths. Hillel is widely recognized as one of the wisest people who ever lived. If you've ever been on a college campus and you've seen the Jewish Students Organization, they are all called Hillel, Hillel International. Those are places where young Jewish students on university campuses gather for worship, for protection, for sustenance, for a feeling of home. Hamish is called in Yiddish. And Hillel is a very familiar word in any knowledgeable Jewish person's vocabulary. First clause of this aphorism roughly translates, as I've said and as has been told to you already, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? All by itself, it seems reductive because it's only about the self. It's only about looking inward. So the other two elements of Hillel's phrase are meant to go with it. They're not meant as separate questions. The phrase distinguishes between two selves, I, or ani in Hebrew, and me, li in Hebrew. It implies that somehow we can have a self called I and a self called me. The I self is the deepest self. It is our personalized facet of the divine image. By contrast, the me is the persona we develop during our lives. Elements of the me originate from others, from society, from that which is coming at us from the outside. A biblical paradigm for wrestling with this identity crisis might be, at least in Jewish parlance, Abraham. Go, get away from your country, your birthplace, your father's house, from Genesis. Literally translated, the words go, get yourself away, can be read, go to yourself. The idea is that only by breaking away from the external forces that operate upon ourselves can we hope to find our true selves. Abraham was told to break away from three levels of non-self forces. Your country, a nationalistic political ideology. I know that must not resonate with any of us at this time in our history. Your birthplace, the more local, communal, and ethnic undertows. Again, it has a common resonance today when we are thinking about who has membership in our place in the world and who does not. And from your father's house, even the particular familial expectations and norms, which may open many windows and doors for us, but which may also limit us in many ways. Abraham's future success begins when he breaks away from those environmental forces. I would suggest, and I'm not original in this by any means, that each of us has an authentic, unique self, an I. Hillel teaches us that if we do not reveal that I, that part of the self that is unique, then who are we? What value is there to the me, the persona who operates in the world? It is just a shell, a conglomeration of societal elements originating in others. I labored for a time in my early adulthood to figure out what my father had meant when he told me so often, and he looked forward to me finding my elemental self, when I would lean into life with my true identity bared to the world, rather than showing who I was because of the pressures or the circumstances in which I labored. That was never more true for me than when I went into service at 19. Never more true for me when I gave up a part of myself rather than asserting my true self in order to keep friends or in order to fit in rather than to stand up and be counted. And I'm sure we all have times in our lives that we can point to when it would have been better, or maybe it was better, whether we did or did not find our elemental selves, our I, alongside our me. The next clause in the aphorism reads, "But if I am only for myself, who am I?" Here the word for I is Anochi. This is also the first word God used at Sinai. If we do not reveal that I, that part of myself that is unique, then who are we? I am Anochi, God your creator, who took you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, from Exodus. This is the revelation of God's innermost being, bursting out behind its barrier and gushing forth like a fountain. Commentators have asked over thousands of years why God identified as merely the God who took the Jews out of Egypt. True, the 10 plagues and the splitting of the Red Sea were unparalleled miracles, but can they compare to the act of creating the universe? Wouldn't it have been more impressive for God to identify as the creator of heaven and earth? However, by self-identifying as the God who just took the Jews out of slavery, the Almighty is focusing on a key defining quality of the relationship to the Jewish people. There is caring and there is involvement with others. The God of the Torah, and I assume the God of faiths like your own, is not the stoic, unmoved mover of great philosophy. God is not the faceless, uncaring God of the deist alone, but is intensely interested in human affairs, having come down into the land of Egypt to free people from the house of bondage and to free us in our generation from all manner of bondage. If we want to emulate God, then, we cannot stay within the isolated ego. And that is implied by the word Anochi. Anochi is the proclamation of intimate nearness between the speaker and the listener. It is an I that encompasses others and is thereby infinitely more whole. If we want to emulate God, we cannot stay within the isolated ego. We must start with the self, Ani, but then move out into the world of others, me. By doing so, we free them and ourselves from bondage and reveal a greater self. It is a self that is simultaneously a part of the greater whole. And if not now, when? The third clause of Hillel's aphorism reads with these words, if not now, when? What does this enigmatic phrase have to do with the struggle of self? The clause describes an important step in bringing self-actualization to fruition. It says to us, stop procrastinating. If not now, when? If you're not going to develop yourself now, if you're not going to make that trip, take that course, meet that person, read that book, work for that cause, when will you? Get moving on it now. Sometimes the very thing that can give us the most satisfaction is the very thing we deny most. It is the door we most fear opening, so we keep the key far out of sight to prevent us from reminding us that there's even a door to be unlocked. We design our lives and busy ourselves from dawn to dusk with activities that may rob us of the time to soberly take up the meaning of life and what we need to do to make it truly meaningful. Even Moses at the burning bush, when God told him to lead the children of Israel out of bondage, said, "Who am I?" Even Moses didn't recognize the full extent of his own greatness or acknowledge his hero redeemer self. Sometimes we are the last to know how great we are. A glowing coal. Whether one is in the midst of developing one's basic I, that true inner self, or moving beyond that into the development of one's Anochi and sharing them with others, each of us has a natural holiness. At our core is a sacred, transcendent self, and that self should glow and glow like an eternal light. A man once approached one of the great Hasidic leaders, who in turn asked him, "For what did you come here?" "Find God." "Then you came for nothing. You're wasting your time." "Why?" "Because God is everywhere." "Then tell me, Master, why should I have come?" And the answer, to find yourself. Out of this extra biblical source, this Hillelian aphorism, comes a call to find our best self. It's not unlike other calls to do that. You've already heard the Golden Rule referenced in your own liturgy. The Golden Rule in all its forms expresses something similar, and of course, it's anything but simple. I'm privileged and honored to share some personal thoughts with you today about finding ourselves, finding our best selves in turbulent times, and perhaps facing our history together. You have a right to know a little bit about who it is that's addressing you. Perhaps it will help you contextualize it or to think about it with the originator of some of these ideas, or the proclaimer of some of these ideas at least, in mind. I began my teaching career in the early 1970s, teaching English and history in public schools, coaching high school swimming and water polo. In the late 70s, my wife and I spent a year in Israel, living and working on a kibbutz, learning history, learning Hebrew, and reconnecting with some of my long-lost family members who had survived the Nazi Holocaust and reestablished their lives in Israel. This had long been a dream for me, and it was very new to my Catholic and Catholic-educated wife. Upon our return to the States, we rebooted our respective careers, we began our family, and we elected to raise and educate our children as Jews. We have in very positive ways wrestled with how to communicate our values to our children in ways that reflect both our identities and the life lessons embodied in both of our backgrounds. I taught English and journalism and history and PE for many years at a large public high school. I spent 18 years doing that, and alongside those roles, I re-immersed myself in postgraduate work on Holocaust and genocide studies, and I taught Jewish history in Hebrew school at my synagogue. It wasn't enough for me to develop my I, but I had also to practice my me. I coordinated trainings and curriculum for educators who wanted to teach especially about the Holocaust. I returned to Jerusalem multiple times for studies at Yad Vashem and Hebrew University. I wrote a textbook based on that deep dive, and I continued to exercise the tension between my I and my me. When I left the classroom to establish the regional work of Facing History and Ourselves, it was to focus on hard histories, focus on genocide-related topics, but also on child and adolescent development, with a deep commitment to helping young people find their best selves. I led a team in providing support and service to over 1,000 schools over the course of 25 years before I retired last year. And now I'm a director emeritus. It sounds very fancy, but it just means I'm venerable and old enough for other directors to look to for some advice once in a while. and I count myself as a continual learner of that work. So in all, I'm a 70-year-old educator, and I'm a believer in both aspirational and immediate goals for myself and for the collective we. And I'm intrigued with efforts by groups like your own, whether it's in a church setting or in a school or in a corporation or in a family unit, to continue striving to find their best self. For me, this comes down to the repair of the world, in Hebrew, tikkun olam, been the divining force in my life, all of my adult life. I ask you to think with me about some of the other aphorisms that have defined many faith groups' life beyond their worship and into their practice as individual. My very favorite, other than the Hillelian quote which began our service, is this one. It may not be yours to finish the work, but neither may you desist from it. Think about what that means. It comes from the wisdom tradition of the Talmud, but it is also the ethic that drives major ethical imperatives of other faith traditions and of multiple cultures. It is a form of, it takes a village. Where in our home or school or work lives can we express or demonstrate that we are part of a larger whole? And that it is true that feeding the homeless at a local shelter does not solve the problem in a full way, but certainly it contributes to the betterment of particular lives. And then lastly, an assertion. Personal character means everything to me. It is the lens through which I view my success in raising my children. It's the view that I take when I look in the mirror daily. I was told as a young man on the eve of leaving for basic training in 1969 by my father, look in the mirror, Jake. He called me Jake. He didn't call me Jack. Look in the mirror, boy. Do you like who is looking back at you? How will you make sure in faraway places that when you look in the mirror, you like the person who is looking back at you? In my house, this was known as mensch building. Mensch is a word that signifies more than just its literal denotative meaning of man or mankind. Mensch means a full and complete human being, means the I and the me bound together. Consider that we have all lived in turbulent times when it might be difficult to look in the mirror and always like who we see looking back at us. My own high school graduation year was 1968. It saw the assassinations of Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King, saw the Tet Offensive in the Vietnam War, saw in my life the wounding of a friend in Vietnam, an eventual amputation of his leg. I spent some portion of my senior year volunteering in the amputee ward at Oak Knoll Naval Hospital in Oakland, about a mile from where I grew up. The Chicago riots unfolded at the Democratic National Convention. There was upheaval behind the Iron Curtain. My own registration for the draft, which eventually caught up with me, occurred that year, and far more. Within a year, I would be a different person, including due to my Army service in artillery, focused for the first part in Utah at the Dugway Proving Grounds. My teachers and my parents were living in turbulent times. It was in that context that my father reiterated many times to me that I was expected to be a mensch, that I was expected to maintain my wholeness as a human being. And I trust that I did as best I could. So how do we keep front and center the will to be complete human beings? One approach to that goal is about actually expressing that will, the ability to actually say it and call for it. I'm here partly because I was asked by my rabbi, Avi Shulman, to do this. It's an odd request for a rabbi to make of a layperson, especially one with whom he has often been in interesting conversations about the tension between belief and my belief and my agnosticism. And he sometimes joked that I'm the most religious agnostic he ever met. And also, I think he appreciates that I'm a disciplined seeker, and that in the seeking, I somehow approach belief more than I do agnosticism. I think that's his take on who I am. And so I come to you not only uncredentialed, but also from a different perspective in the interfaith tradition of exchanges about such ideas. But I am a believer in the fact that if we say it, we bring it into the light, we bring it to life. If we express it, we have in some ways concretized it. We have in some ways connected ourselves with a task, with something actual, with words. Words are not meaningless. Words are the first step toward action. Without words, we may never take those actions. With words, we know what actions to take, we know what direction to follow, and perhaps we can make the world a better place. Here's a second lens to consider about what's at stake in our lives and in our children's lives, and understanding the anatomy of prejudice so they can recognize it, speak to it, travel a different road, and demolish it. Think of the metaphor of a poisonous tree, a tree of negative traditions. The fruit of that tree might be any of the isms that we hope to keep out of our lives. Racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, classism, or perhaps others, such as homophobia, Islamophobia, or other forms of hatred. How is that tree that drops its poisonous fruit kept going? Its root system is planted perhaps in tainted soil. Its deepest roots, the remote ones, reach back in time and space to our forebears' hatreds and fears. The superficial ones reach out more shallowly and perhaps visibly into our own envies, fears, or jealousies. And both the remote and the more proximal roots are dangerous. Hitler used them, the ancient hatred of Jews, as the perennial Judas, as the well poisoner, as the money lender, as the parasite feeding on the healthy body of a nation, as the weak among strong peoples, alongside the everyday prejudices against anyone different, anyone who worshiped differently, anyone embodying the image of the other. That combination of remote and proximal roots for the tree of negative generational traditions explains not only this history, but I would say our own in our own time in a different context. It is an unfortunately workable metaphor for anything unfamiliar enough to raise suspicions about who belongs and who does not. Children understand the concept of fair play better than many adults because they haven't had to compromise the way adults inevitably do. This is why the book and the movie Wonder, which I don't know if any of you have seen, has been so powerful for young people. It's why clergy and parents and teachers must seize any chance to engage not only each other, but young people in discussions about what it means to match ideals to choices and behaviors, how to find your best self, how to actualize the Hillelian idea of joining the I with the me. In some ways, this is simply another call to see your roles as opportunities to nurture positive traditions and to uproot negative ones, to encourage the development of an ethical framework for life which could inoculate ourselves and our children against the things that would keep them from finding their best selves. How do we identify and celebrate and nurture consciousness about embracing fairness and empathy? How do we codify the value of seeing ourselves in the other? It cannot be done by accident. It is a construction, something built and supported, something with antibodies fend off infections of the spirit, something with the idea that we can make ourselves immune to this virus in the body of our nation. We know what we face, what we have always faced, in all the generations of turbulent times that have shaped our lives in the past, and which are all too present in the news cycles today. We have only to look at the daily news to see this in action. And we have only to look in a mirror to understand that we play a role in all of these occurrences, and that the first step on the road back is to be sincere, to speak our truth, and never, ever to let go of what it means to us to be the mensch that we are meant to be. I have a feeling that maybe this is enough to chew on for now. I love the idea of being able to speak my truth, even to people that I don't know, but in an environment which I trust is set up for exactly that kind of reflection. I'm not at all put off or feeling estranged from the sense that my identity may have differences and distinctions in the way we worship or in the way we call ourselves to find our best selves. But I have faith in the commonalities between our traditions, and I dare to say that even as I consider myself a learner, I'm always happy also to be a teacher. And so with that, I'll close, and thank you for your kind attention and for your willingness to listen to the voice of a stranger on a Sunday morning, not face to face, but on a screen. And I trust that you'll make meaning of it in your own way, and that I hopefully have contributed